Most people have no idea what a single ordinary day is actually worth to them. And that blindness is not harmless. It costs them years. Consider Marcus. He is 32 years old, works in commercial real estate, makes a solid income, and by any external measure is doing fine. He goes to work, comes home, scrolls through his phone, watches Netflix, sleeps. He repeats this same sequence 5 days a week. On weekends, he catches up on errands, sees friends, tells himself he will start something new on Monday. Monday comes. The same sequence restarts. He has convinced himself this is just how life works. You work, you pay bills, you age, you retire. Somewhere between now and retirement, something meaningful will happen. He believes his real life is coming later. Here is what Marcus cannot see. He is not waiting for his life. He is living his life right now, and the way he spends today is the precise predictor of where he will be in 10 years. Most people labor under a profound misconception about how human progress actually works. They believe breakthrough happens in moments. They imagine waking up one morning transformed, or landing one perfect opportunity that changes everything, or finally reading one book that reorders their thinking. They wait for the lightning strike. Meanwhile, they squander the ordinary days, the unremarkable Tuesday, the forgettable Wednesday afternoon, the Thursday evening when nothing special is happening. These days feel worthless because they produce no visible result, so they treat them as worthless. This is the catastrophic error. The one sentence most people never understand is this: your life is not determined by your exceptional days. It is determined by your ordinary ones. Think about that for a moment. Not the day you finally quit drinking, not the day you get promoted, not the day you make the big sale or have the profound conversation or start the new project. Those moments matter, yes, but they are not the foundation of who you become. The foundation is built in the days when nothing remarkable is happening, when your motivation is low and the outcome is invisible, when you are alone with your choices and nobody is watching. Here is why this matters. Ordinary days are where compounding lives. Compounding is not a financial concept, although it works perfectly in finance. Compounding is a law of human potential. It is the principle that consistent small actions, repeated over time, produce results that are mathematically impossible from the action itself. A 1% improvement does not sound significant, but 1% compounded daily is unrecognizable in 12 months. The person who reads 5 pages of a difficult book every single day will have read nearly 2,000 pages in a year. They will know more, think differently, and see patterns invisible to someone who reads the same 0 pages daily. The person who writes 500 words every morning will produce a complete book in 60 days. The person who does 50 push-ups every evening will gain tangible strength and discipline. These are not miraculous outcomes. They are the inevitable mathematics of consistency applied to ordinary days. But here is what almost nobody realizes about this. The person who does these things once or twice, or even 10 times, experiences almost nothing. The breakthrough does not happen in the first week or the first month. It happens in the quiet accumulation that nobody else sees coming. It happens in the redundant days, when the same action produces the same invisible result. It happens in the compounding curve. And most people have abandoned the curve long before the curve abandons them. Most people see an ordinary day as just another day. Successful people see an ordinary day as leverage. They see it as a choice point. They see it as a unit of currency in the economy of a lifetime. They understand that this day, this unremarkable Thursday in July, is worth far more than it feels like in the moment. They understand that they are not actually spending time. They are building themselves. They are compounding. And that changes everything about the choices they make during those ordinary hours. The tragedy is not that people do not know this intellectually. Most people have heard about consistency, habits, discipline, delayed gratification. But knowing it is not the same as believing it. And believing it in your mind is not the same as actually organizing your life around it. The gap between knowing and living is where most people get stuck, and it is in that gap where the ordinary days slip away. This is where Marcus stands right now. He is not lazy. He is not incapable. He is simply organizing his life around the wrong timeline. He is living as if his days are worthless until something extraordinary happens. And that assumption will define the next decade of his life in ways he cannot yet see. But what if he could? What if he understood what was actually possible when ordinary days are treated not as filler between moments, but as the very substance of a life worth living? That is what comes next. The mathematics of compounding are so straightforward that most people assume they already understand them. They do not. Understanding compounding intellectually and truly grasping what it means across a human lifetime are two completely different things. This is where the blindness gets dangerous. Marcus has heard the expression before: small, consistent actions compound into extraordinary results. He has probably read it in an article or heard it in a motivational podcast. He nodded, thought, yes, that makes sense, and then continued living exactly as he had been, because the math did not feel urgent, the curve did not feel real. Here is what almost nobody truly understands about the compounding curve. It is deceptively flat at first, then it is invisibly steep in the middle, then it is incomprehensibly vertical at the end. This is not a metaphor. This is literally how exponential growth functions. Imagine you have a penny, 1 penny, and imagine that every single day this penny doubles in value. 1 penny becomes 2 cents. 2 cents becomes 4 cents. 4 cents becomes 8 cents. For the first week, this is laughable. After 7 days, you have 64 cents. Still nothing. After 2 weeks, you have $81.92. After 3 weeks, you have over $10,000. After 1 month, you have over $5 million. After 2 months, you have over $1 billion. This is not hyperbole. This is the actual mathematics of exponential growth. And yet most people do not organize their lives around exponential principles. They organize their lives around linear expectations. They think, if I improve 1% today, then tomorrow I will be 2% better. 2% tomorrow, 3% the day after. They think the improvement is visible and steady and proportional to the effort. This is the mental model that keeps them stuck. But here is the hidden mechanism nobody discusses. The compounding curve has a patience period. That first month where your penny goes from 1 cent to 64 cents, that is demoralizing. The effort feels invisible. The results feel non-existent. Your brain sends you a message: this is not working. Quit and try something else. This is the exact moment when 99% of people abandon the curve. Think about what happens in the real world with this pattern. Someone decides they will read a business book every month. They read book 1 in January. They feel energized. They understand some new concept. They implement it a little bit. Nothing dramatic changes. In February, they read book 2. They are slightly more informed. Nothing dramatic changes. By March, they are already thinking about doing something else. Reading books is not working, they think. Their life is not different. So they stop. But what if they had kept reading? What if they read that same 1 book per month for 10 years? They would have read 120 books. They would be among the most widely read people in their industry. They would see patterns in business, human nature, leadership, and psychology that would be invisible to 99% of people around them. They would be able to predict market movements and people's behavior and organizational failures. They would have advantages that money cannot buy, but this reality never feels real until it is already happened. Until then, it just feels like reading books that did not change anything. This is the trap. The compounding curve does not look like anything is working until suddenly everything is working. The curve is flat, flat, flat for so long that your brain genuinely believes the effort is pointless. Then one day you look back and realize that the person you have become is completely different from the person you were. How did this happen? It happened through ordinary days, through invisible accumulation, through 1,000 choices that felt meaningless in the moment but stacked perfectly on top of each other. Marcus is starting to understand something he never quite grasped before. His current life is the result of years of seemingly insignificant daily decisions. Every day he did not read, he compounded illiteracy. Every day he did not practice, he compounded mediocrity. Every day he did not push himself, he compounded comfort. He did not fail in one dramatic moment. He succeeded at slowly becoming the kind of person who does not try. And he has been doing this so consistently that it feels like just how he is. But here is what this understanding unlocks. If ordinary days can compound you into stagnation, they can also compound you into mastery. If the curve works downward, it works upward with identical efficiency. The same mathematics that made him ordinary can make him extraordinary. The same daily choices that built his current life can build a completely different one. Most people get excited about this realization for approximately 48 hours. They feel the possibility, they feel the urgency, they feel the motivation. Then Monday comes, or Tuesday, or that moment when nobody is watching and the effort is invisible and the outcome is unclear. And the old pattern reasserts itself, because understanding the mathematics of compounding is not the same as being the kind of person who actually lives like compounding is real. There is a behavior pattern that shows up in almost every person who actually builds something real across time. It is not what most people expect. It has nothing to do with talent or intelligence or luck. It has everything to do with how they see themselves and what they are willing to accept as normal. There is a behavior pattern that shows up in almost every person who eventually builds real advantage over time. It is quiet, it is easy to overlook, and it looks nothing like what most people expect when they imagine what a successful person actually does. It is not that successful people work harder. It is not that they are more intelligent or more talented or born with some genetic advantage. It is something far simpler and far more invisible. Successful people have a completely different relationship to ordinary days. They do not see ordinary days as interruptions in their real life. They see ordinary days as their real life. And this changes absolutely everything about the choices they make. Consider Sarah. She's also in her early 30s, also works in a demanding field, also has the same 24 hours that Marcus has. But Sarah thinks about her days differently. When she wakes up on a Tuesday morning and knows she has 8 hours at work and then evening at home, she does not see this as a waste or a delay or filler time before something better happens. She sees this Tuesday as the material she is actually using to build her life, not metaphorically, literally. This shift in perspective changes what she does with those hours. It changes what she prioritizes. It changes what she accepts as normal. Because if this Tuesday is not preparation for some future Tuesday when she will finally be happy or successful or fulfilled, then what she does today matters enormously. It is not an investment in a future that might never come. It is the actual substance of her life right now. Here is what this produces. Sarah reads when she does not feel like reading, because she has decided that being the kind of person who reads is more important than the temporary discomfort of the moment. She writes when the writing is difficult, because she has decided that being the kind of person who creates is worth the struggle. She has difficult conversations she would rather avoid, because she has decided that being someone who does not hide is more important than being comfortable. She does not do these things because she expects them to pay off. She does these things because the person she is deciding to become does these things. This is the fundamental difference. Most people ask, what will this action give me in return? Sarah has learned to ask a different question. What kind of person does this action? The answer to that second question reorganizes her entire life. Think about what this actually means in practice. It means that when Sarah sits down to work on her skills in an area where she is not yet good, she is not thinking about the outcome. She is not measuring whether this 30-minute practice session is worth it. She is thinking about identity. She is thinking, I am the kind of person who practices, even when it is hard, even when I cannot see the result yet, even when it feels pointless. This thought, repeated thousands of times across thousands of ordinary days, gradually makes it true. And here is where most people get this wrong. They think identity follows achievement. They think, I will achieve something first, then I will become the kind of person who does that thing. They wait until they have written 10,000 words before calling themselves a writer. They wait until they have made significant money before calling themselves an entrepreneur. They wait until they have built muscle before calling themselves someone who exercises. But identity actually works in reverse. Identity precedes achievement. You become the kind of person who writes by deciding you're a writer and then writing daily, even when you have written almost nothing yet. You become an entrepreneur by deciding that is who you are and then making small entrepreneurial decisions in your ordinary days, long before the achievement arrives. Most people see this as self-deception. They think, I cannot call myself a writer if I have not published anything. I cannot call myself an entrepreneur if I have not built a business. But what they are actually doing is preserving their current identity. They are protecting themselves from the discomfort that comes with claiming something they have not yet proven. And in doing so, they guarantee that they will never become that thing, because the pathway to any significant achievement runs through a long period where you are claiming an identity that your current results do not yet support. Sarah has done this work. She decided years ago that she was the kind of person who learned, the kind of person who grew, the kind of person who showed up even when it was hard. This decision did not change her circumstances immediately, but it changed her choices. And her choices, accumulated across 10,000 ordinary days, changed her circumstances entirely. She is not more talented than Marcus. She is not working a different job or living in a different city or blessed with some advantage he lacks. She is simply organizing her life around a different belief about who she is. And here is what makes this so powerful. This belief compounds. When you believe you are the kind of person who practices, you practice on days when you do not feel like practicing. That practice compounds into skill. That skill produces small, visible results. Those results reinforce your belief that you are someone who gets better. So you practice more. The cycle accelerates. What started as a decision about identity produces results that feel earned, that feel real, that feel deserved. But the truth is that the results came second, the identity came first. There is something else happening in this pattern that nobody discusses openly. When you start organizing your life around an identity that your results do not yet support, something inside you becomes uncomfortable. You feel like a fraud. You feel like you are pretending. You feel the gap between who you are claiming to be and what you have actually accomplished. This discomfort is crucial. This discomfort is where real change lives, and this is precisely the moment when most people abandon the path, because the discomfort tells them they are doing something wrong. But the discomfort is not a sign you are wrong. The discomfort is a sign you are growing. It is the feeling of your old identity dying and your new identity not yet fully real. Most people cannot tolerate this space. They retreat back to their old story about who they are, because at least that story feels comfortable. But people like Sarah have learned to live in this discomfort. They have learned that the discomfort is the price of transformation, and they are willing to pay it. This is the invisible advantage that separates people who compound from people who remain stuck. It is not intelligence or talent or opportunity. It is a willingness to claim an identity before you have earned it, and then to organize your ordinary days around proving that identity is real. But here is what Sarah discovered that most people never do. There is a sabotage mechanism that activates precisely when the compounding curve is about to turn vertical. It arrives without warning, it feels completely justified, and it destroys more progress than anything else. Sarah had been organizing her life around her identity for approximately 6 months when it happened. She had written consistently. She had practiced her craft. She had turned down social invitations to protect her work time. She had started to see small results. Her writing was improving. People were beginning to notice. She was getting closer to something that felt like it could become real. And then one morning she woke up and thought, "This is ridiculous. Who do I think I am? I'm not a real writer. Real writers went to school for this. Real writers have credentials. Real writers have published. I am just someone pretending. I am embarrassing myself. I should stop before I fail publicly." The thought felt completely true. It felt like reality arriving to correct her delusion. She spent 3 days believing this thought. 3 days where she did not write. 3 days where she felt relief. Relief that she could stop pretending. Relief that she could go back to normal. Relief that she did not have to keep failing in private. By day 4, the relief had shifted to something else. Shame. The shame of being someone who quit. The shame of being someone who did not even try. The shame of playing small when something inside her was screaming to expand. She went back to writing. But now there was a scar. Now there was proof that when things got difficult, when the stakes got higher, when the possibility became real, she would quit. This is the sabotage pattern. It is not dramatic. It is not a sudden catastrophic failure. It is a quiet whisper that arrives when you are closest to a breakthrough. It tells you that you are not good enough, that you are fooling yourself, that you should stop before you fail more publicly. And it feels true because it arrives precisely when you are most vulnerable, precisely when you have been working hard and the outcome is still uncertain, precisely when the real test is beginning. Most people experience this sabotage and interpret it as evidence that they should quit. They think the doubts are real. They think the voice is telling them truth. But the voice is not truth. The voice is fear. And the voice arrives most loudly at the exact moment you are about to cross a threshold. Here is why this happens. Your brain has a security system. This system is designed to keep you safe, to keep you in patterns that feel familiar, to keep you in the identity that you have always occupied. And this security system does not care if that identity is small or limited or unfulfilled. What it cares about is predictability. What it cares about is avoiding the unknown. When you start to really change, when you start to organize your life around a new identity, when you start to see real results, you are moving toward the unknown. You are moving toward a version of yourself that does not yet exist. You are moving toward outcomes that you cannot predict or control, and your brain's security system begins to scream. It sends you every doubt, every insecurity, every reason you might fail, every reason you should return to the safety of who you have always been. The cruelest part is this. The sabotage intensifies right when you are closest to the breakthrough. This is not coincidence. This is how the security system works. It is a final test. It is checking. Are you serious about this change, or are you just playing around? Because if you are serious, you have to be willing to move through this sabotage. You have to be willing to feel the doubt and keep going anyway. You have to be willing to not believe the voice that tells you to quit. This is where most people fail. Not because they are not capable, not because they are not talented. They fail because they misinterpret the sabotage as evidence that they should stop. They think the voice is wisdom. They think the doubt is reality checking. They think the discomfort means they are doing something wrong. But people who actually compound through this barrier have learned something crucial. The doubt does not mean you should stop. The doubt means you are changing. The doubt is not evidence against the new identity. The doubt is evidence that the new identity is real enough, that your old identity is fighting back. Marcus has watched this happen to friends before. He has watched people who seem to be building something real suddenly quit and go back to their comfortable lives. He always assumed they quit because things got hard or they lost interest. But now he is beginning to understand. They quit because of the sabotage. They quit because something inside them convinced them that the version of themselves they were trying to become was not real. And they could not tolerate the discomfort of living in that gap between who they were claiming to be and who they had actually been. Sarah learned to recognize the sabotage. She learned that it was not truth. She learned that it was actually a signal that she was growing, a signal that she was becoming someone different, a signal that she was close enough to the breakthrough that her old identity was feeling threatened. So she developed a practice. When the sabotage arrived, when the voice told her she was fooling herself, she would write down the doubt. She would look at it, and she would ask herself, is this actually true, or is this my security system protecting me from the unknown? The answer was almost always the same. It was her security system. The doubt was not based on evidence. The doubt was based on fear. And knowing the difference changed everything. Because once you know the sabotage is not truth, you can move through it. You can feel the doubt and keep writing. You can feel the insecurity and keep practicing. You can feel the fear and keep showing up. And with each day you do this, the sabotage gets quieter, the old identity gets weaker, and the new identity starts to feel like home. But here is what comes next that most people never see. The person you become on the other side of this sabotage is not the same as the person who claimed the identity in the beginning. Something has shifted in how you see yourself. Something has become unshakable. The person you become after moving through the sabotage is fundamentally different from who you were before. And the most important difference is not visible to anyone else. It is not in your resume or your accomplishments or the way you present yourself to the world. It is in what you do when nobody is watching. This is where compounding actually lives. Not in the public victories, not in the moments when someone else is observing and validating your efforts. Compounding lives in the private moments, in the hours when you are completely alone with your choices, in the decisions you make when the effort is invisible and the outcome is uncertain and absolutely nobody will ever know if you showed up or if you cut corners or if you quit. Sarah understands this now in a way that goes beyond intellectual understanding. She feels it, she lives it, because she has learned that who she is in private is more powerful than who she is in public. She can say she is the kind of person who writes, but that claim only becomes real if she actually writes when nobody is watching, when she is tired, when she does not feel inspired, when she could easily skip a day and nobody would know, when the resistance is high and the motivation is low, and the only person she would be disappointing is herself. This is the critical threshold that most people never cross. They can show up when there is external accountability. They can perform when someone else is watching. They can be disciplined when the stakes are public. But in private, when there is no audience and no immediate reward and no external pressure, they reveal who they actually are. And most people, when they are truly alone with their choices, default to comfort. They default to what is easy. They default to the old identity. Marcus has experienced this his entire adult life, though he has never named it this way. He tells himself he is someone who wants to improve. He talks about starting a project. He thinks about learning something new. But when he is home alone on a Tuesday evening, when the couch is comfortable and the show is interesting, and nobody will know if he reads or watches television, he watches television. He is not lying when he tells himself he wants to improve. He is simply revealing what he actually believes about himself in private. He believes he is someone who rests, someone who deserves comfort, someone who will start the real work tomorrow, and his private choices, not his public aspirations, are building his actual life. Here is what Sarah learned through years of private practice. Your identity is not what you say about yourself. Your identity is what you repeatedly do when nobody is watching and the effort is invisible. That is the real you. That is the person who is actually compounding. She started to notice something extraordinary. As she continued to show up in private, something inside her shifted. She was no longer trying to become a writer through force of will. She was no longer fighting against her resistance and doubting herself. She had become the kind of person who writes because it was simply what she did. It was not aspirational. It was not effortful in the way it had been in the beginning. It was just who she was now. The private behavior had become so consistent that it had rewired her sense of self. Think about what this actually means. It means that when she sits down at her desk in the evening after a full day of work, when her energy is low and her motivation is depleted, she does not have to think about whether to write or not. She does not have to overcome resistance or summon discipline or negotiate with herself about the value of the effort. She simply writes. Because that is what people like her do. That is what she does. The decision has already been made at the level of identity. This is where most people misunderstand motivation and discipline. They think discipline is about willpower. They think it is about gritting your teeth and forcing yourself through resistance. But real discipline is not about force. Real discipline is about having an identity so deeply embedded that the right choice becomes the path of least resistance. It is about no longer having to decide. It is about the decision being made automatically because of who you have become. Marcus watched this shift happen in Sarah, though he did not fully understand it at first. He noticed that she seemed to write without effort, that she seemed genuinely happy to work on her craft, that she did not talk about discipline or motivation anymore. She just did it. He asked her once, "How do you stay so consistent?" She looked at him, confused by the question. "I do not stay consistent," she said. "I just write. It would feel strange not to write. It would feel like pretending to be someone I am not." This is the difference between someone who is trying to be disciplined and someone who has built a new identity. The person who is trying is always swimming against the current. They are always having to overcome who they have always been. They are always choosing the hard path. They are always fighting. But the person who has rebuilt their identity at the level of private behavior is no longer fighting. They are no longer swimming upstream. They are no longer trying. They are simply living. But here is what makes this even more powerful. This shift at the level of private identity starts to produce results that are visible. The private writing begins to produce work that matters. The private practice begins to produce skill that people recognize. The private consistency begins to produce advantages that the person did not even consciously intend. Because once you are no longer fighting who you are in private, once you have reorganized your private behavior around a new identity, your public results begin to follow naturally. Most people try to reverse this sequence. They try to get the results first, thinking that results will change who they are. But it does not work that way. Results follow identity, and identity is built in private. Identity is built in the choices you make when you are completely alone. Identity is built across 10,000 small moments where you choose to show up or you choose to hide. Identity is built across 1,000 days where you do the work even though nobody will ever know you did it. This is why compounding is so invisible to most people, because the actual work of compounding happens in complete privacy. It happens in the hours when you are alone with your choices. It happens in the moments when you could lie to everyone else and they would never know, but you know. You know who you actually are, and that knowledge, that private integrity, that is what builds something real across time. There is a certain type of person who has learned to build their life from the inside out instead of from the outside in. They do not chase public validation. They do not organize their choices around what others will think. They organize their choices around who they are deciding to become in private. And that choice reorganizes everything. It changes not only what they do, but it changes what becomes possible. It changes what they can build. There is a certain type of person who has learned something that separates them from almost everyone around them. While other people are competing for visible wins, for recognition, for proof that they are succeeding, these people are quietly building invisible advantages. And by the time anyone notices what they have built, the advantage is insurmountable. This person exists in every field. In business, they are the person who spends years building relationships, learning their industry deeply and understanding the patterns that nobody else sees yet. While their peers are chasing promotions and titles and the appearance of success, they are building competence and trust and foresight. Then one day there is an opportunity, a shift in the market, a problem that needs solving, and this person is the only one who is ready. They seem to rise overnight, but they did not rise overnight. They were building for years. In creative fields, they are the person who is writing or creating or practicing when nobody is watching, when there is no audience and no validation and no proof that the effort matters. They are the person who has produced 10,000 hours of work that almost nobody has seen, so that when they finally release something public, it is remarkably good. They seem to come from nowhere, but they were building the entire time. In athletics, they are the person who is training with ferocious intensity in private, gaining marginal advantages in strength and technique and mental toughness that are invisible during the off-season. Then, when competition arrives, they are noticeably faster, stronger, smarter than everyone else. They seem to have an unfair advantage, but the advantage was built in the private hours. It was built through choices nobody else saw. The key difference between the silent accumulator and everyone else is this. The silent accumulator is building for a future they cannot yet see. They are not building for next month's validation. They are not building for this quarter's results. They are not building for anything they can prove is working right now. They are building because they have decided that compound advantage is more valuable than immediate recognition. Think about what this actually costs. While everyone else is posting their progress on social media, the silent accumulator is working in privacy. While everyone else is getting feedback and encouragement from their audience, the silent accumulator is working without feedback. While everyone else is building their personal brand and their visibility, the silent accumulator is building their actual capability. From the outside, it looks like the silent accumulator is losing. It looks like they are missing opportunities. It looks like they are wasting time on work that does not matter. But here is what almost nobody understands. Visibility and capability are not the same thing. In fact, they often work against each other. The person who is focused on visibility is constantly managing their image, performing for their audience, sharing their progress before it is ready. This takes energy, this takes focus, this takes time away from the actual work of building real capability. The person who is focused on building capability can dedicate all of their energy to the work itself. They can afford to be inefficient in ways that lead to breakthrough. They can afford to fail in private. They can afford to try things that might not work. They can afford to be thoroughly, messily human. Sarah has learned this distinction at a deep level. For years, she tried to build visibility first. She posted her writing. She sought feedback. She watched her follower count. She optimized for people liking her work, and her growth plateaued. Her writing was acceptable, but it was not remarkable. Her audience was encouraging, but it was small. And she felt this constant pressure to produce content that was shareable, that was likable, that was safe enough to put into the world before it was truly ready. Then she stopped. She turned off the public sharing. She stopped checking metrics. She stopped writing for an audience. She started writing for herself. She started writing to understand something deeply, to solve a problem, to explore an idea thoroughly. She wrote things that were ugly in their first draft. She wrote things that contradicted her previous thinking. She wrote things that were only 3% ready for public consumption. And she did this for months, years actually. For years she produced almost nothing that anyone else saw. During this time, people asked her about her work. She would tell them she was writing, but she was not ready to share anything yet. They would assume she had quit. They would assume she had lost her momentum. She would seem like she was going backward, but she was not going backward. She was going deeper. She was building something real. And then something changed. When she finally started sharing her work again, it was different. It was better in ways that were not just technical. It was better in ways that were fundamental. It carried the weight of genuine thought. It carried the depth of real exploration. It carried the authority of someone who had done the work. People recognized this immediately. The work seemed to have an inevitability to it. It seemed like it had to be this way. And the audience grew quickly. But not because she was chasing visibility. The audience grew because the work itself had become remarkable. This is what the silent accumulator understands that almost everyone else misses. There is a threshold of capability beyond which visibility takes care of itself. If you build something remarkable, people will notice. If you become genuinely good at something, people will seek you out. You do not have to convince them to care. The work speaks for itself. But to reach that threshold, you have to be willing to spend an extended period in complete obscurity. You have to be willing to build without recognition. You have to be willing to seem like you are failing by the standards that most people use to measure progress. Marcus is beginning to see this pattern everywhere now that he understands it. He sees it in the colleague who spent 3 years mastering a skill that nobody asked for, and then suddenly became invaluable when the business needed exactly that skill. He sees it in the friend who read obsessively for a decade with almost no external payoff, and then suddenly saw the world with clarity that everyone else was still struggling to achieve. He sees it in the mentor who spent 20 years building relationships and trust so that when an opportunity came, everyone wanted to work with him. The silent accumulator is not working harder than everyone else. They are not more talented. They are simply building a different way. They are betting on the compound advantage. They are betting that if they become genuinely excellent at something, if they build real capability in private, if they accumulate genuine knowledge and skill and understanding, then at some point the market will recognize this and reward it. And they are willing to wait through all the years when the market is not rewarding it. They are willing to be invisible. They are willing to seem like they are falling behind. They are willing to do this because they have learned something about how the world actually works. The world does not reward visible effort. The world rewards visible results. And results do not come from visibility. Results come from capability. And capability is built in private. But here is where most people fail to compound, even when they understand the principle. They understand that capability is built in private. They understand that results follow identity. They understand that extraordinary outcomes come from ordinary days. And then they quit, not because they do not believe in these principles. They quit because they run out of patience. Impatience is the silent killer of compounding. It is more destructive than laziness because lazy people never start. Impatient people start brilliantly. They start with energy and enthusiasm. They start believing in the compound advantage. They start organizing their lives around it. And then at some critical moment they break. They break because the timeline does not match their expectations. This is what almost happened to Sarah. By month 9 of her private writing practice, she had produced significant work. She had written essays that felt important. She had written pieces that she knew were good. But she still did not have anything published. She still did not have external validation. She still could not point to anyone else and say, "See, this is working." And the doubt arrived. Not the self-sabotage she had learned to recognize. Something different, something more reasonable sounding. The thought was this: maybe this is taking too long. Maybe I should try a different approach. Maybe I should start putting work out there, even if it is not perfect, because at least then I would have some feedback and some momentum. It was a reasonable thought. It sounded wise, it sounded like progress, but it was actually impatience disguised as wisdom. And if she had followed it, she would have broken the compounding chain at the exact moment it was about to accelerate. Think about what happens when you break the chain. You do not lose everything you have built. You lose the exponential acceleration that was about to begin. You go back to linear progress. You go back to effort that produces proportional results. You go back to the flat part of the curve when the curve was about to turn vertical. Here is the mathematics of what Sarah avoided. Imagine two people. Both start a compounding practice on the same day. Person A is patient. Person A understands that the curve is flat for the first months. Person A accepts this. Person A shows up every single day for a year without external validation. At the 1-year mark, Person A is in the middle of the compounding curve. Things are starting to accelerate. By year 2, the acceleration is obvious. By year 3, the results are visible to everyone. Person B is impatient. Person B starts the same way, but at month 9, when the external validation has not arrived, Person B breaks. Person B starts doing things differently. Person B starts seeking feedback. Person B starts building visibility. Person B shifts focus from building to promoting. Person B's trajectory flattens immediately. The compounding stops. Person B will never experience the exponential acceleration that Person A experienced. Now here is the cruel part. From the outside, it looks like Person A got lucky and Person B did not. It looks like Person A found something that worked and Person B did not. It looks like Person A has some advantage that Person B lacks. But the difference is not luck. The difference is not talent. The difference is patience. Person A was willing to spend a year in obscurity. Person B was not. And that single difference changed their entire trajectory. Marcus has watched this play out in his own life. He started a side project once. It was something he believed in. He worked on it consistently for 4 months. Nothing happened. Nobody noticed. There was no feedback. There was no indication that his effort mattered. So he quit. He told himself the project was not viable. He told himself he should try something else. He told himself he had made the right call by not wasting more time. But now he understands what actually happened. He quit because he ran out of patience. He quit because the timeline of his expectations did not match the timeline of how compounding actually works. He was expecting to see results in 4 months. Compounding does not work on a 4-month timeline. Compounding works on a multi-year timeline, and most people do not have that kind of patience. This is why impatience is such a competitive advantage when you overcome it. Because almost nobody has it. Almost everyone will quit at month 9 or month 12 or month 18 when the external validation has not arrived. Almost everyone will break the chain right before it accelerates. Almost everyone will interpret the absence of immediate results as proof that the effort does not matter. But the person who understands that patience is a weapon, who actively cultivates the ability to wait, who can tolerate months or years of invisible progress, that person will compound while everyone else is still looking for the shortcut. Sarah made a decision at month 9. She decided that she would not measure progress by external validation. She decided that she would commit to this practice for at least 3 years, with the assumption that nothing meaningful would happen for at least the first 2. This decision was transformative. It released her from the pressure to perform. It released her from the need to prove that the effort was working. It allowed her to focus entirely on building, not on convincing anyone else that her building mattered. By month 18, things had shifted. The work was noticeably better. By month 24, she had accumulated a body of work that was genuinely impressive. By month 36, the external validation began to arrive. Publishers wanted to see her work. Opportunities appeared. The curve turned vertical. But she had been building for 3 years. 3 years of showing up. 3 years of patience. 3 years of refusing to break the chain. This is what most people do not understand about patience. Patience is not passive. Patience is not waiting around and hoping things work out. Patience is the active decision to keep compounding even when everything inside you is screaming to quit, to change direction, to try something new. Patience is the refusal to break the chain. Patience is the commitment to stay on the curve long enough for the exponential acceleration to become visible. Most people think the acceleration happens at month 6 or month 12. They think that is how long change takes. But exponential growth does not work that way. The first months are the flattest part of the curve. The acceleration is barely visible until you have already committed to a significant timeline. By the time it becomes obvious that something is working, you are often years in. This is the hidden advantage of patience. While everyone else is breaking their chains because the timeline does not match their expectations, the patient person is still compounding, still building, still accumulating. And then one day, the person who broke their chain looks back and sees the person who stayed, and it looks like the patient person got lucky. But luck had nothing to do with it. Patience had everything to do with it. But here is what Sarah discovered: that patience alone was not enough to protect. Almost every person who understands compounding and commits to patience still loses their advantage anyway. They lose it not to laziness. They lose it not to lack of discipline. They lose it to something far more insidious. They lose it to the tyranny of other people's urgencies. Marcus experienced this directly. He had finally decided to start his own compounding practice. He had committed to learning, to building something, to showing up consistently. He was going to read 1 hour every morning before work. He had the books picked out. He had the schedule blocked. He was ready. But on the first morning, his boss called with an urgent issue that needed his attention before the office opened. He skipped the reading. On the second morning, his mother needed a favor. On the third morning, a friend texted asking for advice on a relationship problem. On the fourth morning, he got an email from a colleague with a quick question that actually took 40 minutes to resolve. By the second week, the reading had disappeared entirely. Not because Marcus did not want to read, not because he had lost the motivation or commitment, but because his time had been colonized by other people's priorities. This is the invisible killer of compounding, not your own resistance, not your own lack of discipline, other people's urgencies. The endless stream of requests, obligations, questions, emergencies that arrive every single day. Each one seems small. Each one seems like it cannot wait. Each one presents itself as important, and collectively they destroy the space you need to compound. Think about what this actually means. Compounding requires time, not just time, but protected time. Time when you are not available to everyone else. Time when you are not answering emails or taking calls or solving other people's problems. Time when you are working on something that has no immediate payoff, that serves no one but yourself, that produces no visible result in the short term. This kind of time is radically difficult to protect in a world where everyone else is constantly competing for your attention. Sarah learned this the hard way. In the early years of her writing practice, she protected her mornings. She woke up early. She wrote before anyone else needed anything from her. But as her life became busier, as her job demanded more, as friends reached out more, as obligations accumulated, that protected time began to erode. A meeting got scheduled in the morning. A friend wanted to have coffee. A family obligation required her attention. Each incursion seemed minor. Each time she could tell herself she would make it up later, but later never came. The compounding time was being stolen. Here is what most people do not understand about their own time. They do not actually own their time. They rent their time. They rent it to their employers, their families, their friends, their obligations. They have convinced themselves that this is just how life works, that you have to be available, that you have to be responsive, that saying no is selfish or cold or unkind. But here is the hidden cost of this belief. If you are available to everyone else's urgencies, you are unavailable to your own compounding. These are not compatible. You cannot be completely available to other people and also completely committed to building something for yourself. One will win. Usually the other people win, because their urgencies are immediate and visible and demanding, while your compounding is invisible and distant and optional feeling. Sarah made a decision that most people never make. She decided to be unavailable, not as a rejection of the people in her life, but as a protection of the time she had decided was non-negotiable. She blocked her writing time on her calendar, and she treated it as unmovable. She turned off notifications during these hours. She did not check email. She did not answer texts. She was not reachable, and she told people this directly. "I write from 6 to 8 every morning," she would say. "I am not available during this time. If there is a genuine emergency, you can reach me, but otherwise, I will talk to you after 8. Most people were fine with this. Most people understood. But some people were not. Some people felt rejected. Some people thought she was being unreasonable. Some people tried to persuade her that being this unavailable was unkind or selfish, or not how real friends or family members behaved. And Sarah had to make a choice. She had to choose between being available to other people's judgments about her choices or being available to her compounding. She chose compounding. This is the cost of protecting your compound time. You will disappoint people. You will seem unavailable. You will be accused of being selfish. You will have to tolerate other people's discomfort with your boundaries. And most people cannot pay this cost. Most people would rather abandon their compounding than disappoint someone else. But here is what Sarah discovered on the other side of this cost. The people who truly cared about her, who truly wanted her to succeed, who truly loved her, they supported her choice. They understood that her compounding time was not a rejection of them. It was an investment in becoming who she was trying to become. And they respected it. And the people who did not understand? She slowly realized that their judgment of her choices was not something she had to internalize. Their discomfort with her boundaries was not her responsibility to manage. This shift was profound, because once she stopped defending her compounding time to other people, she was able to protect it fully. There was no guilt. There was no internal negotiation. There was simply a fact. From 6 to 8 in the morning, she was not available. This time was hers, and everything else had to work around this fact. Marcus watched this play out and realized something about himself. He was not actually lazy. He was not actually lacking discipline. He was actually lacking boundaries. He was saying yes to every request. He was available to everyone. He was responsive to all urgencies, and in doing so, he had made himself unavailable to himself. He had made himself unavailable to his own compounding. He started to notice how many hours of his day were actually controlled by other people. Work obligations, family expectations, social commitments, the endless demands of being responsive and available. When he actually calculated the hours of his life that were genuinely his to control, the number was shocking. Most people have far fewer hours than they realize. This is why protecting your days from noise is not a nice to have. It is not something you do if you have extra time. It is fundamental to whether compounding happens at all. Because compounding requires time. Protected, uninterrupted, guilt-free time. and that time has to be defended against the constant encroachment of other people's urgencies. But there is a way to make this easier. There is a way to protect your compounding time without having to constantly defend it against the world. There is a way to make the right choice, the path of least resistance. And that way changes everything about whether you actually follow through. There is a principle that separates people who sustain their compounding from people who burn out trying. Real compounding never relies on willpower. It relies on structures. Willpower is finite. Willpower depletes through the day. Willpower fails when you are tired or stressed or overwhelmed, but structures never fail. Structures make the right choice, the path of least resistance. Structures make the right choice automatic. Sarah learned this when she realized that even with protected time and clear boundaries, she still sometimes skipped her writing. On days when she was exhausted from work, when she was emotionally drained, when the resistance was particularly high, she would tell herself she would write tomorrow instead. She would break the chain. And each time she broke it, she had to decide again the next day whether to keep going or quit. This is the hidden cost of relying on discipline and willpower. Every single day you have to decide again. Every single day you have to overcome the resistance. Every single day you have to push through the discomfort. This is exhausting. This is burnout waiting to happen. But what if you could build a structure that removed the need to decide? Sarah did this in several ways. First, she changed her environment. She created a specific space in her apartment that was designed only for writing. She put her desk there. She put nothing else there. No television, no comfortable couch, no distractions. She put a sign on the door, "Writing Space." When she sat at this desk, her brain understood immediately what was about to happen. There was no negotiation. There was no decision. There was simply, "I am at my writing desk, therefore I write." This seems small. It seems like it should not matter, but it matters enormously because the environment is constantly shaping your behavior without your conscious awareness. If you have your laptop open to social media, you will scroll social media. If you have your phone within arm's reach, you will check your phone. If you have comfortable distractions nearby, you will distract yourself. But if your environment is structured so that the only option is to do the work, then the work becomes inevitable. The second structure Sarah built was commitment. She told a friend about her writing practice. She committed to this friend that she would write every morning. She even took it further. She sent her friend a message every morning when she finished, just to create accountability. This was not about being dishonest with herself. It was about making it harder to quit. Because now, if she skipped a day, she would not just be breaking her own commitment to herself. She would be breaking a commitment to someone else. And most people find it harder to disappoint other people than to disappoint themselves. The third structure was removal of friction. Sarah had her laptop already open to her writing document when she sat down. She did not have to turn on the computer. She did not have to open the program. She did not have to navigate to her file. All of that friction had been eliminated. The only thing between her and writing was sitting down. This sounds trivial, but friction is where most people lose their compounding. Not dramatic resistance, just tiny friction. Having to find the file, having to clear a space, having to get in the right mindset. Each piece of friction is an opportunity to decide to do something else instead. The fourth structure was automation. Sarah put a reminder on her calendar every morning at 5:50, 10 minutes before her writing time. The reminder said simply, "You are a writer." Not, "You should write," or "It is time to write." Just, "You are a writer." This reminder reinforced the identity while also triggering the behavior. It was a soft prompt that kept her aligned with who she had decided to be. Marcus realized he could apply the same principles to his own compounding. He wanted to learn, so he created structures to support that. He downloaded a reading app and set it to open every morning when he unlocked his phone. He put his book on the kitchen counter where he would see it first thing. He joined a reading group, that met monthly, creating external accountability. He even asked a friend to text him weekly, asking about his reading. None of these things required willpower. They simply made reading the path of least resistance. Here is the crucial insight that most people miss. Your environment is not neutral. Your environment is either supporting your compounding or it is working against it. If your environment makes the compounding activity hard and the distracting activity easy, then you will have to rely on willpower to choose correctly. And willpower will eventually fail. But if your environment makes the compounding activity easy and the distracting activity hard, then you will compound almost automatically. Think about what this means practically. If you want to exercise, do not rely on willpower to get yourself to the gym. Instead, sleep in your gym clothes. Put your gym bag in your car before you go to bed. Sign up for a class with a friend so you have accountability. Make the gym your environment. Make exercise the path of least resistance. If you want to eat better, do not rely on willpower to resist junk food. Instead, do not buy junk food. Do not have it in your house. Make healthy food more convenient than unhealthy food. Make good eating the path of least resistance. If you want to build something, do not rely on willpower to show up consistently. Instead, create a space dedicated only to that work. Eliminate friction between yourself and the work. Build in accountability. Make the work your environment. Make building the path of least resistance. This is why systems are more powerful than motivation. Motivation comes and goes, but systems are permanent. Systems work even on the days when you do not feel motivated. Systems work even on the days when you are tired or discouraged or doubting whether the effort matters. Systems make the right choice automatic. Sarah has built her entire life around systems at this point. She does not rely on discipline to write. She relies on the structure of her writing space, her writing time, her writing identity, her accountability to her friend. The structure carries her through the days when discipline would fail. And because she has built this structure, compounding is no longer effortful. It is just what happens. This is what the most successful people understand, that most people do not. You do not build your life through willpower and discipline. Those are fine for short bursts, but they are not sustainable. You build your life through systems. You build your life through structures that make the right choice inevitable. You build your life through an environment that supports who you are trying to become. And once the systems are in place, compounding stops being something you have to force yourself to do. It becomes something that happens to you. But here is what comes next that most people never consider. Building systems is not the end. Building systems is actually just the beginning of a different way of seeing your entire life. A way of seeing that changes not just what you do, but who you become. Once you understand systems, once you have built the structures that make compounding automatic, something shifts in how you see your entire life. You stop seeing your life as a series of individual days. You stop seeing your life as the urgent present moment. You start seeing your life as what it actually is, a long game that spans decades. This shift in perspective is the final transformation. It is the difference between someone who understands compounding intellectually and someone who actually lives like compounding is real. Marcus is beginning to understand this now. He is starting to see his life not as a collection of todays, but as a continuous trajectory. And when you see your life this way, everything changes. The choices that felt optional become urgent. The time that felt infinite becomes precious. The person you are trying to become stops feeling like a distant fantasy and starts feeling like an inevitability you are building toward right now. Here is what the long game mentality actually means. The person you will be in 10 years is being decided right now. Not in some future moment when you finally get serious. Not when you finally have enough time or enough resources or enough stability. Right now, today, in this ordinary week, in this ordinary month. The person you are becoming is being built through the systems you have in place, the identity you are claiming, the way you spend your protected time, the choices you make when nobody is watching. There is no delay between now and then. The building is happening now. Sarah has lived in this understanding for years now, and it has changed everything about her life. She does not see her morning writing practice as something she does because she wants to be a writer someday. She sees her morning writing practice as the evidence that she already is a writer. She does not see her daily learning as an investment in some future version of herself. She sees her daily learning as the way she is living right now. She does not see her boundaries and her protected time as a sacrifice she is making today so she can succeed tomorrow. She sees her boundaries and protected time as the actual substance of her life today. This is the final liberation that the long game mentality provides. It removes the delay. It removes the sense that you are suffering through today so you can enjoy tomorrow. It removes the feeling that your real life is coming later. Because you understand that your real life is happening right now. The person you are becoming is the person you are becoming through the way you spend today. Think about what this means for your decisions. If you truly believe that the person you will be in 10 years is being built right now, then every single choice becomes weighted differently. The choice to read or to scroll becomes weighted differently. The choice to protect your time or to give it away becomes weighted differently. The choice to claim an identity or to hide becomes weighted differently. Not because you are trying to impress anyone or prove anything, but because you understand that you are literally building yourself through these choices. Marcus is sitting with this understanding now, and it is uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable because it means he cannot pretend anymore that he has unlimited time. It means he cannot tell himself that he will start tomorrow or next month or next year, because tomorrow and next month and next year are not separate from today. They are an extension of today. They are built from today. And if today is ordinary and unexamined and spent on other people's priorities and filled with distractions, then tomorrow will be the same, unless he decides differently right now. This is where the real work begins. Not the work of building systems, not the work of protecting time, not the work of claiming a new identity, the work of genuinely believing that this matters, the work of genuinely believing that your ordinary days are the substance of your life, not the filler between your real life. The work of living like the long game is real. Sarah has done this work. She has integrated it so completely that she no longer thinks about it. She simply lives it. She wakes up and knows that this day is the day she is building her life. She makes choices from that place. She protects her time from that place. She shows up in private from that place. And her life has become remarkable, not because of any single dramatic moment, but because of 10,000 ordinary moments that were treated as sacred. The most important thing to understand about the long game mentality is this. It is not aspirational thinking. It is not wishful thinking. It is practical thinking. It is understanding how human beings actually change, how capabilities actually develop, how lives are actually built, not through force, not through dramatic transformation, but through the patient accumulation of ordinary choices that compound across time. And here is the final piece that ties everything together. Once you truly understand this, you cannot unsee it. You cannot go back to pretending that your ordinary days do not matter. You cannot go back to living like your real life is coming later, because you will know the truth. You will know that the person you will be in 10 years is not a mystery. That person is being built right now, and that person is entirely in your control. Not their circumstances, not their opportunities, not their luck, but who they are becoming through the way they spend their time, the choices they make, the identity they claim, the systems they build. This is not burden. This is freedom. The weight of this understanding settles differently for everyone. For some, it arrives like liberation. For others, it lands like responsibility. But once you see it, once you truly understand that the person you are building is being constructed right now through the smallest choices, something inside you changes. You stop negotiating with yourself about the value of an ordinary day. You stop pretending that real progress happens later. You stop waiting for the moment when everything will finally make sense and you will finally be ready to begin. Because you are already beginning. You have always been beginning. Every single day that you have lived, you have been compounding into someone. The only question was whether you were compounding deliberately or by default, whether you were organizing your days around who you are trying to become, or whether you were organizing them around who you have always been, whether you were building consciously, or whether you were letting your environment and your habits and other people's urgencies build you automatically. Marcus understands this now. He is not suddenly a different person. He has not had a breakthrough moment. He has simply shifted where he is directing his attention. He has shifted from seeing his time as something to be managed and optimized and filled with productivity, to seeing his time as the actual material he is using to build his life. He has shifted from waiting for extraordinary circumstances to understanding that extraordinary results come from ordinary days treated as extraordinary. This is the compounding advantage, not a secret, not a trick, not a shortcut, simply the understanding that consistent, patient, protected effort across time produces results that seem impossible from the vantage point of today. And the willingness to live in that understanding, even when the results are still invisible, even when nobody else can see what you are building, even when the curve is still flat and your brain is screaming that the effort is pointless. You will never see the moment when it all shifts. You will never notice the exact day when the curve turns vertical. But one day you will look back and realize that you have become someone different, and you will understand that this person was built one ordinary day at a time. And that understanding will change everything about how you approach the days ahead.